Welcome to our Social Enterprise Fundamentals video series. This is the last video in the series where we will reflect further upon the feasibility decision and explore options for next steps. So far, we have built our understanding of a social enterprise's broader ecosystem context and the major elements of a social enterprise's business model. This enables us to unpack a social enterprise idea, that is, an idea of how to address a social problem through a business model that includes significant trading activity. Unpacking a social enterprise idea allows us to make an initial assessment of its likely feasibility, remembering that feasibility for a social enterprise is not about will this idea make me money, which is a key question for commercial entrepreneurs. For social enterprise, the feasibility questions include: is this social enterprise idea likely to achieve its intended social impact in a financially sustainable way? And, because social enterprises tend to start up using other people's money, such as funding from philanthropy or impact investment, there is also a question about the feasibility of the founders of the social enterprise being able to marshal the resources needed to establish it. Just a note on funding sources for new social enterprises. While we say that social enterprises tend to start up using others' money, this is not always the case. Sometimes, as we know, a social enterprise will be established under a for-profit model, and the founders will design it so that they receive a proportion of the profits. But to be considered a social enterprise, rather than a social business, these payments need to be less than the funds that are being used to achieve the social purpose. So founders who invest in the establishment of their social enterprise will not be rewarded financially at a comparable rate to a commercial entrepreneur founding an analogous business, but they are able to get some financial return. And often, they may also call on impact investment or crowdfunding to supplement this. Also, sometimes existing not-for-profit, charitable and welfare organisations look to start a social enterprise to either further their social mission directly or to generate funds to support their existing social programs. In this instance, the organisation often invests some of their own funds directly into establishment of the social enterprise, but they also often look to others to help supplement this. Of course, any social entrepreneur looking to start a social enterprise will end up investing their resources into its establishment, indirectly through their time and energy, as well as the income that they forego from spending time developing the social enterprise before it can pay them a wage. Recognizing this is also an important part of the feasibility decision. Regularly asking the question, is this the best use of our time and energy, is an important part of growing self-awareness for a social entrepreneur, irrespective of whether they are part of an existing organisation or looking to start a new one. In our last video, we discussed using the analysis and estimates exercises from the workbook to help inform these decisions. Information gathered as part of developing the social enterprise's theory of change and its business model will form the basis of the feasibility assessment at this stage. We covered how to do this in our first video for this topic. What we wanted to highlight here is the importance of being realistic and honest with yourself at this point. There is a fine line between being passionate and enthusiastic about an idea and what it can achieve, and being so optimistic that in the end, it actually risks causing harm. Let's look at why. Firstly, as we discussed in the last video, the estimate of how much startup capital a social enterprise needs is informed by the estimated establishment costs, that is, all the things the social enterprise needs to buy or acquire before operating, and once it starts to operate, the estimated operating expenses, and the estimated operating income, that is, all the income the social enterprise generates from operating, which gives us the operating deficit. If we look at the relationship between these, we see that the startup funding that a social enterprise requires is determined by the estimated establishment costs plus the operating deficit. If we look at this graph, let's imagine what happens if we are too optimistic about the establishment costs. If we underestimate how much startup funding is needed, we won't have enough money to pay for everything we need to operate the social enterprise effectively. If the social enterprise doesn't have enough money to start up properly, founders may cut corners, and this can mean that the social enterprise starts off without some of the essentials needed to operate effectively, or it may not even start up at all. This can have a flow-on effect to operating income, and therefore the startup funding, which is based on the estimated operating deficit, isn't enough, and the social enterprise goes broke. Now, let's imagine what happens if we underestimate operating expenses, if expenses are actually higher. As you can see, there is not enough startup money and the social enterprise runs the risk of going broke. Similarly, if we are too optimistic about how much income a social enterprise will earn, or too optimistic about how long it will take to get to that level of revenue, the social enterprise runs the risk of going broke because the startup funding that was based on their estimated operating deficit will be inadequate to cover costs. And while any business going broke is bad news, when you have beneficiaries relying on the social enterprise, the implications are potentially more dire. Also, if you remember that most social enterprises will, at least in part, rely on other people or organizations who are going to be asked to contribute to or invest in the establishment of a social enterprise, this puts an additional onus on the social entrepreneur to be prudent about their feasibility assessments and planning at any and all points in the development process. Whilst in commercial startups, the founder will often leap from this stage of business model informed feasibility assessment to let's do it, in social enterprise, where there is a need to attract collaborators and funders, there is more work to be done yet. Why? Well, one reason is that while it is never a good thing for any investor to lose money, in social enterprise, the risk-reward relationship is not the same, and grant money that went into funding a flawed idea could have been directed into something that would have created social value, so there is a social value opportunity cost. Also, as we have said, social enterprise is complex, with lots of stakeholders, which of course introduces a tension and a challenge. How do you remain realistically prudent in planning your social enterprise and at the same time excite and energize others, including potential collaborators and funders? One solution to this is more detailed thinking that can help inform the story about how the social enterprise will be built, how it will run, and what it will achieve. In other words, social enterprise business planning. And if your initial feasibility assessment indicated that your social enterprise has potential, then this is your next step. Moving into more detailed business planning, which requires you to circle back on your social enterprise model and start to ask, how will this work? This initial foundational feasibility work you have will have also highlighted some issues and weaknesses in your model that it is important to circle back on and address. All entrepreneurship, including social entrepreneurship, is an iterative and ongoing process that never stops. Even once you have launched your enterprise, there will be significant tweaks and adjustments needed because we start any enterprise with imperfect knowledge about how it will play out. While a crystal ball would be a wonderful tool for social enterprise startup, in the absence of that, we have to strike a balance that is based on our best efforts to get as close as possible to what is likely to happen. So this is good news for you if your initial feasibility assessment has raised a number of concerns that suggest that, in its current form, your solution is unlikely to have its desired effect. You can go back to thinking about the problem again and look for an alternate solution, which may or may not be a social enterprise. Or you can stop looking for a while, as often the best ideas come to us when we are not trying. If you are keen to progress your idea, support is available from a number of places, and we have a tool in the resources for this video to assist you. Of course, we would love you to consider applying to join the Social Startup Studio's AV8 program. You can find out more about the program and the support it offers to get your social enterprise off the ground in the resources and on our website. Thanks for watching our Social Enterprise Fundamentals video series. We hope to see you at a workshop or a Social Enterprise Network meetup soon. This video was produced by the Social Startup Studio, an initiative of the Centre for Social Impact at Swinburne University of Technology.